Right, thank you very much indeed. So welcome to the Wychavon District Audit Committee of Friday the 22nd of November. Moving to item 1, apologies for absence. I think we have one.
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Gregory Wilkins.
Thank you very much. Moving on to swiftly on to item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest from anybody on the committee? I see none. Thank you very much. Item number 3, minutes of the previous meetings, pages 5 to 8. Were there any points people wanted to raise from the minutes or clarify? No? If we can agree the minutes of the previous meeting, all agreed? Thank you very much. So we move on to the main business of the day, which is item 4, the statements of accounts 21, 22, 22, 23, and also the look back to the previous year. Alice, I don't know, or Jane, do you want to give an introduction?
Thank you, Chair. So members will remember back in April, I think it was April 2023, you approved the accounts for 2021. So what we have to do now, in line with the changes in legislation in terms of the backstop date of ensuring that the backlog of audits can be cleared, the backstop date is the 13th of December. So what we have to do is we have to approve the unaudited accounts for 21, 22 and 22, 23, and Hassan will, on the next agenda item, will go through his completion report. So we've got, from a finance point of view for Wychavon, in 2020-21, as I said, we did approve the accounts. There was a small amount of work to be undertaken by the auditors, but unfortunately they were not able to undertake this last section in terms of pensions, and you'll see on the completion report they've disclaimed the accounts, which Hassan will explain. For 21-22, some work was undertaken, but in terms of that capacity from the external auditors, they weren't able to complete the whole audit, and again that year has been disclaimed. And what we've done is we have included the key statements in the report. So you've got the income and expenditure account and the movement in reserve statement, and I think that's it, is it, Alice? Was it? And the balance sheet, sorry, of course, balance sheet, cash flow. So the 4 key statements, but we've also included a link to the main statement of accounts should you wish to have a look at it. For 22-23, no work was undertaken, but we do have a value for money judgment, which again is part of the report that Hassan will present. There's also a letter of representation, which is from the council, which again we're asking for delegation for. In fact, yesterday we had a slightly amended one, not very much different. You've got a previous template, but it's just agreeing that in principle for myself and the chair to sign that off by the 13th of December. We did have one of the reasons that we can't bring that to the meeting today in its totality is when you publish the accounts for the year, you have to give the public 30 days. And unfortunately, during 21-22, there was a bank holiday day, so we gave 29 days instead of 30. But unfortunately, we've still got to, in line with the legislation, we've still got to publish that. So Alice republished it, and the closing date for that is the 12th of December. So that's why we need myself and the chair to audit the accounts. To approve the unaudited accounts. And I think probably, Chair, I know members, we've had a chat beforehand, but that was probably more on the completion report as well. But I think if we can move that forward, that'd be great. Thank you, Chair. Take any questions. Sorry.
I think if we can not confuse the two things, because in item 4, the statement of accounts for 21, 22 and 22, 23, we have 2 recommendations that we can approve the unaudited statement of accounts having considered the completion reports, that we being the chair of the committee with the section 151 officer, and then the chair of the audit committee together with the section 151 officer can approve the letter of representation for the associated years as included in Appendix D. Are we happy, or do we have any questions on this authorisation? of accounts? I don't see any. In that case, if I can just move formally the two recommendations, which empowers me as the chair and Jane to approve the unaudited statements of accounts for those 2 years. Or are we all agreed? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And then I'm going to move swiftly on to item 5, which is the audit completion report. And Hassan, thank you for joining us today. There's nothing else further you want to say on this, is there? No. I think afterwards. I think over to you, Hassan. Thank you. You can just run us through where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you have the copy of our audit completion report, and so members may be aware, as a result of the government's reset of the local audit market and establishment of a backstop date, as Jane has just outlined, we'll be closing out our outstanding audits and issuing a disclaimed audit opinion. To do so, there are a number of procedures which we need to undertake in accordance with ISA requirements, and that includes communicating results to members of the committee, and that also includes having to communicate to members of the committee our planning intentions for those particular years, the outlining materiality considerations, considerations of procedures which we've undertaken in respect of assessing independence, and also outlining the communications that we need to fulfil in terms of our responsibilities to the audit committee. So all of those particular points are addressed within the report. So members may be thinking, why is it that we need to outline what the planning intentions are for an audit where we are issuing a disclaimed opinion? But that is a requirement of the auditing standards. So just taking you through in terms of page 38 of the report, it kind of outlines the system-wide context and the phases which have been proposed as part of the recovery. And on your page 39, so that's page 7 of the report, provides a summary of the local background and context. So highlighting there the impact following on from the pandemic in terms of what that had on resourcing, outlining some of the issues which came up as part of the during that period. Also highlighting that the council has actually been in a position to present a draft statement of accounts within the required timeframes, although, as Jane has just mentioned, that for the 21-22 accounts, the inspection period has had to be re-advertised, as it didn't meet the full 30 days. We do kind of outline that we commenced our audit on the 2021 accounts. A substantial amount of work had been undertaken, but procedures in respect of the pensions liability were outstanding. And then subsequently, as a result of a lot of issues in terms of resourcing from our perspective, then we weren't in a position to complete our procedures on the outstanding audits. What we have undertaken as part of the assurances to audited bodies, we have made sure that we've completed our value for money assessment, and within the report in section 4 of the report, you will see the conclusions which we've reached in respect of the work which we've undertaken on the value for money arrangements, and they are the arrangements which are specified by the NAO as part of their as part of their code of part of the code. So we've got responsibility to assess arrangements in 3 specified areas, being financial sustainability, governance, and improving efficiency and economy. And we haven't identified any significant weaknesses in arrangements which we would need to report on by exception. And so that's a good position to be in terms of your value for money arrangements. And then moving back on the report in section 3 of the report, it provides the proposed audit wording for the disclaimed audit opinion. I wasn't proposing to go through in terms of doing a page turner and highlighting any other particular areas of the report. There's probably there maybe just be one thing which I should mention, and that's in respect of fees, which are outlined in Appendix B. So the fees are set by the PSA Limited, and PSA are considering what the fee position is going to be for disclaimed audits, and you should be expecting to receive communication from the PSA at some point in terms of what the fee position will be. If members had any kind of questions on that, then that will be an issue for PSA. But I'll now, so they're the key points which I wanted to cover, but happy to take any questions if members have any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Hassan. I think members are going to have some questions because we, as you know, are an authority that has prided ourselves over 50 years for the strength of our financial resilience, our accuracy of reporting, and our standards of accountancy and indeed of audit inside this. And I do think this is deeply regrettable that you are unable to issue an unqualified opinion for these 3 years. I mean, I'm particularly vexed by 2021, where a delay on the pension fund audit, although the pension fund audit ran on time, that you couldn't pick this up and clear off 2021 because obviously the accounts of the county council and of the pension fund were audited on time, and I rather suspect that this is, frankly, an excuse. The delay to 2022 and no work whatsoever being done on 2023, I think, is quite extraordinary by such an outstanding firm such as Ernst & Young or EY. I mean, what Dara Singh would have said about this, I dread to think. And I really would emphasise to the committee that I don't see this as being the fault of our officers and the finance team or anybody else who's involved in it. The blame for the fact that we are in this position with unqualified accounts is entirely down to the failure of our auditors, who appear to be blaming COVID-19 and anything else they can think of. But I really think this is just completely unacceptable. And clearly, we will be making our views known as we do. But the plus side, I suppose, is that at least we now have, by December the 13th, a way forward. Although the effect, in my view, of Ernst & Young's failure is, of course, that it will take us some years before the accounts become qualified again. So, we have a way forward. I think we are in a deeply unfortunate position, and I do regard this as not being of our own. And on those notes, I shall move on to any other questions or points of interest. I mean, I don't really have any questions on your work because it's pretty lightweight, to be frank. Over to anybody from the committee to make a comment. Neil.
Well, I do think they've managed to unite the political parties like no one else, to be honest, because I have to echo the Chairman's words. And I know you've tried to dodge the fees question by saying it's someone else's sort of remit to look at that. But I just wonder how you can justify, or how you expect us to justify to residents, that our council's going to be charged money for a half job. I mean, if I went to a coffee shop and asked for a cup of coffee and I got the coffee machine broke after sort of half a cup of hot water and I'd already paid and was told, tough, that's all, you've still got to pay for it, I think you can imagine what the words would be. So I don't think, obviously, we should be paying for any of the bills for 22, 23 especially, because, frankly, you didn't finish the work. And I ran my own business for 14 years and I never once got to charge anybody for half a job, which I wish I could have done, because I would have been worth a mint now. But I just want to, you know, how you can justify your fees, to be honest, Hassan.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the points that you made, Chair, that's note those points in respect of the position that the local audit market as a whole is facing. I would say it's not just an issue that's impacting on EY. The FRC have published a document, I think it was last week, and it outlines that potentially there are 450 opinions which are going to be subject to a disclaim process in order to meet the 13th of December backstop date. So that kind of sets out that it's an issue that's impacting the whole sector, not just any one firm. In terms of the fees, there have been work and procedures which have been undertaken in order to get to be able to issue the disclaimed opinion. I can understand points that members are making, but as I have said, the fee position is and the fees are determined by PSA Limited. PSA have said that they'll be communicating to the sector in terms of where that is going to land for disclaimed opinions, but they've yet to issue those communications. So, and if there are issues in respect of the fees, then that needs to be put through the PSA.
Could I just say as an external person here, that I hope that the Council do make severe representations to the PSSA. As I say, firstly, in terms of the quality of the work, but secondly, in respect to 22-23, where apparently, as I hear right, no work at all has been done. So I hope that the Council do make the representations to the PSSA quite strongly.
In respect of 22-23, Chair, the work that has been undertaken as outlined within the report, we have undertaken work in respect of our value for money responsibilities, looking at the arrangements which the Council has in place, and we are reporting on the outcomes of that work in the audit completion report.
Yeah, Sam, I don't wish to be mean to you, but I'm going to be. I mean, I regard that as being a fig leaf, to be frank, that you've issued a value for money report, because otherwise you would have absolutely done nothing. Otherwise, you would be issuing absolutely nothing, and you haven't done any substantial work on the accounts. Though all you've done is in effect. What was described, well, I would describe as being the tick box exercise, and that is, pretty easy to do and probably took you about an hour. So, slightly unimpressed, frankly. Else from
In terms of,
sorry, yeah. You want to come back? Yeah, fair enough.
So, sorry, Chair, was that myself, or was there a member of the committee who was going to come back?
I'm sorry, you can't hear me. Did you want to make a comment, Hassan?
No further comments from me, Chair, unless there was another question.
I mean,
There's nothing to question because nothing's been done.
it is quite hard, isn't it? Right. Well, thank you very much indeed for attending today, Hassan. And thank you very much indeed for the 3 years of value for money reports. I reiterate what I say. I do think it's absolutely deeply regrettable that that a firm with such an international reputation as your own has been unable to produce the audit completion reports for 21, 22 and 23, which, I mean, you know, I just find astounding. But, I mean, obviously, ever since you changed your name, things have gone downhill. When you became EY, obviously, I don't know, probably a bit like some others I could name, standards have slipped dramatically, in my view. I want to add just a recommendation, if I may, over this question of fees, because I think that Graham and Councillor Neil Franks, have made a really good point. I think we ought to add a recommendation that says that we vigorously will contest the fees that Ernst & Young are expecting the PSSA to approve, and would expect James R151 officer to liaise and express our displeasure over being billed for no output. Is that fair enough, Jen?
Absolutely, Chair. You put that, Spencer and I can get the words together, but if we can have that as an additional recommendation, that's fine.
Absolutely second that, and happy to go with that. And I just do find it quite funny that they are judging us for value on money, for money.
Right.
Chair, sorry, Chair, just
Hassan.
yeah, just in respect of the fees, just to be clear, we haven't gone back to, in terms of, we're not asking the PSA to approve the scale fee, which is set out on the appendix. We're outlining to you what the scale fee was for that particular for the particular years of audit. What I am saying is that the fees for those years, in the context of a disclaimed opinion, hasn't yet been determined and communicated by the PSA. So, so you'll need to be waiting to see what the PSA come out with in terms of the fees that they're going to be setting for audit years which have been disclaimed. I don't know what that's going to be. The sector doesn't know what that's going to be, but we'll need to wait to see what the PSA come out with.
I do think that we are an exceptional case in this, to be honest, because while I understand your argument that it would probably suit Ernst & Young or EY to engage in a nationwide agreement of their failure with the PSA and to try and extract some money on them, I think our position is that, frankly, we shouldn't pay you a bean for 23, for sure. And I'll leave the rest of the negotiation to Jane. But, I mean, I take your point that this is an ongoing negotiation between the national body and yourselves. I would just reflect that in Worcestershire, out of the 400 plus incomplete audits, I think you amount to 2.5% of them. And that's before I've cast my mind further afield. So while I acknowledge that other firms have failed over this period, and I do acknowledge that there is some difficulty in getting auditors to work on local government accounts, I still think that a firm of your scale and competence and international reputation which should have been able to find the resource to deploy and to complete something that I would regard as being a fairly standard audit, to be honest. So, I mean, I think the longer this goes on, I'm finding my level of irritation seems to be growing. So I think on that note, I think it's probably wise if we move the vote and close this off. So we have the recommendations. We're adding another recommendation to them that Jane makes the vigorous representations for the PSA. And on that note, I think we are all, I'm looking for no, Neil seconded it. Yep. So are we all agreed? We are agreed. But thank you very much indeed for attending.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we can now it's a fun meeting this today, isn't it? They told me all it would be boring. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is item number 6, the 25-26 budget. This is, in effect, an update. It's pages 103 to 142 regarding where the Council's 25-26 budget is, and if we have any comments or any considerations that we want to add. I mean, obviously, this is very early days. Yes, I'm terribly sorry. I forgot to tell the committee that Graham, unfortunately, has to go at 2:30. We've managed to get through, I mean, I think the most interesting point before the independent has to leave. But thank you very much indeed for attending, and a safe trip. So I don't know if Alice wants to, or Jane wants to, or you're going to do a double act just to bring us up to date with where we are.
Thank you, Chair. It will be me. I'll just 2 seconds. I just had to get Hassan out of the meeting. Sorry. Bear with me 1 second. Apologies, Chair. Yes, it'll still be on broadcast, of course, members, because it's been broadcasted. Sorry, yes, the budget. So members will have seen this. Anybody who's on budget scrutiny will have seen all of the level of detail. Anybody who's sat through the executive board, will have also gone through this. We're still in a bit of a state of uncertainty until around the 16th to 18th of December, when we'll have the settlement in from government, we hope. So what we've done at the moment is we've assumed there'll be a roll forward of the majority of the grants that we've had previously. So that will include our 4% funding guarantee and the largest ones of these, the 4% funding guarantee, and also the business rates growth, which we assume will then be reset in 2026-27. Right, at least that's where I am on time. So probably the best page to go to is the money plan, which is on page 2 seconds, Chair, apologies. There we go, it's that page there. Where's that? Page 119. Yeah, 119. So if you look at page 119, which is the landscape document, so we've used the assumptions that were agreed back in September in terms of pay and in terms of inflation, etc., and where we think we'll get our rate of return on our investments. And then what you're seeing where it's got original budget 25-26. So it's the block at the bottom. That's where we're not sure. So that's the finance from. So as you can see, there's a assumed business rates growth, which is showing at 4.3 million. And then 4% funding guarantee, which is 3 million. We assume we're going to get that. All of the advice we've had from the people kind of that we speak to around the country and the advisors that we have said that they assume also that we'll get that in for 25-26, but then we'll lose that in 26-27. So you can see quite quickly, if you look at the bottom of the table for 25-26, our current balances are 16 million. We're putting in a further 3.4 million, so our balances will be just under 20. But then quite quickly, as you can see, our deficits are then 5.5 billion, 6.5 billion, 6.5 billion. The reason the last year isn't a large deficit is because we've had to fund the deficit from reserves because there's no more money to take, there's no more balances to take when we get to 29/30. So we couldn't take a deficit of 6.5 million out of no balances because it would show you've got a deficit in your balances, which you can't have. So what we've done, if you look 4 lines up, you'll see contribution from reserves of 6,956. So what we're saying there is we're taking £6.9 million from our earmarked reserves in at 29/30, excuse me, to therefore balance the balances back out. We have got a transformation programme starting at the beginning of next year, so we're working with all the heads of service to see how we can make ourselves more efficient and also generate more income. Those are the 2 areas that we need to do. Where can we make savings and where can we generate additional income to ensure that by the time we get to, over the next couple of years, to 2026, 27, whilst we could, if we wanted to, we could still fund that deficit of 5.5 million. We need to be showing and demonstrating to members and the public that we are starting to generate a return, more of a return, and that we're making savings across the piece. Excuse me. I think that's probably it, Chair, because members are probably aware of everything else that's been talked about on the budget. And as soon as we get the settlement in probably the last week in December or just before that, we will let members know what's tumbled out and the impact on the money plan.
Thank you. Nick?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, carry on.
Sorry, I know we discussed it some time ago, but this is to do with the potential of the government taking our business rates off us directly or something, is it?
So at the moment, very simply, we collect around 30 odd million pounds worth of business rates. That's all sent to the government, and then they give us some back as part of the settlement. They also allow us to keep our growth. Well, simply they let us keep the growth, but there is a business rates pool, so we get elements of that. They've been talking for at least the last 7 years, if not more, that they will reset that base. So they will say, your base is this, we'll take your growth off you and you can start growing again and keeping that growth, but you will have your growth taken off you and there'll be some sort, I won't say levelling up, but there'll be some sort of levelling up of business rates across the country, because we're doing quite well with our business rates. There's other places around the country, other councils that are not able to generate the level of business rates that we have. So the idea is, we assume it'll be for 26, 27, so there'll be a year's worth, there'll be some consultation next year. There may be a transition period. They might not take the whole 4.3 million off us straight away. It might be, well, we'll take a bit this year, well, 50%, 25, something like that, but we're not sure. So at the moment, what Alice and the team have done is said, we'll get the 4.3 million in for next year, because we assume we will, and then we'll get just 250,000, which is a very flat line figure for the rest of the years. Okay.
Any other questions, Neil or Liz? I mean, sorry, you've got a few.
Well, just, I mean, obviously there's a lot up in the air, isn't there? That you're just trying to juggle invisible balls, to be honest. It's a bit madness, to be honest. But though, admittedly, the new government hasn't been in long, so I suppose they do need time. With regards to the plans that have been drawn up, what's the kind of timeline for that? And will they sort of come to the audit committee? Will there be an impact assessment on the efficiency savings and stuff like that? And will that come to the audit committee before it's sort of finalised?
So as it's it'll be financial plans moving forward. We're literally right in their infancy at the moment, councillors, so we haven't got a timeline. Heads of service to start to pull things together. But that will go through overview scrutiny executive board as opposed to audit committee. Audit committee is more about the building blocks that sit underneath all of that. But it'll be ONS and exec board. Sorry, and council.
And
All the
council,
way to council.
yeah. And if I look at the timings of it, it counts as, I think, the 20th of February, isn't it?
Yes, Chair. Is it 20th? I thought it was earlier than that.
Or is it 13th?
26 is full council, sorry. Exec board is early, but the transformation plans won't be in that report.
Yeah.
It will be ready for 26, 27, and during the year that we'll be pulling them together.
Sorry, yes. I mean, I'm thinking this year's budget.
Yeah.
At the audit committee for this year's budget. Sorry, I've gone off the point. You're looking in the future. Forget it.
Yeah, sorry,
I mean,
that's a good point. Sorry, Chair. So for the transformation plans 26-27, they'll
So-
have a full impact assessment. But as this budget has come to audit committee, they will as well. Sorry, but
Yeah.
during next year, towards the end of next year.
Is there any sort of, I don't know what the word is, but is there any sort of protected areas that they've says that we can't take cuts to that, any cuts to certain areas? So it's particular areas that are looking at, well, we call them efficiency savings. But I suppose all areas are looking at revenue generating, but I just wondered if there was any protected areas.
So we definitely aren't using the word cuts. We will be saying how can we make ourselves more efficient? How can we generate more income? And at the moment, we've asked all the heads of service to look at what they do within their services. The one thing we wouldn't want to do, which I've done previously, well, I've seen done previously, is everybody needs to lose 15%, because what happens then is you do everything really badly. So we absolutely don't want to do that. We want to see where I think Wychavon has always been really good at generating income, which you've seen for the Waitrose and the hospital, and that's really where we want to move our sort of energies into.
In my normal day job, I work at a council as well, which has got a bit of a reputation at the moment for failing on a spectacular level. And internally, they have, well, but one thing they've done recently is actually, they've gone out to the staff, to be honest, and they've done a sort of an anonymous sort of fact-finding information, every little idea that every staff member's got on how to make those sort of savings and stuff like that. And that seems to have been very successful and seems to have galvanised the workforce to look at those efficiency savings, to make the savings without worrying about cuts, if you know what I mean.
Something we can pick up, definitely. Thank you.
I was going to say we can probably round this off because, one, we're going to have a period of consultation on this budget with our business community and, of course, through ONS, the exec board, and one or two others. And it comes back on the 14th of Feb to us, admittedly not 7 days before full council. Have we got the date wrong for full council? Is it the night before? Can't be. Anyway, so we have a period of time on which to think about this and consult on it, because I did like your analogy about juggling invisible balls, because that's absolutely right. Because I think the government finance settlement is going to be an interesting one, although I suspect that the majority of the change that might come will be driven by the spending review, the application of deprivation to various formulas, and also that dreaded word that re-emerged the other day, which was the late John Prescott was always very keen on, what he called resource equalisation, which always gave, the good citizens of Worcestershire that warm feeling that they were building a new high school every year in Hull. And a railway. And a railway, yes. But, just back to the prediction for 25, 26, you see that our revenue expenditure continues to rise. The question for the council is, does it rise fast enough in view of the demands that it is facing? And I could come up with a list of those, but I'd rather leave that to ONS. They are quite long. The one thing that I did just wonder if we'd worked into our finance forecasting was the new national insurance rates on our contractors, and whether we were intending to, whether our contracts were robust enough that it was their risk, or whether that was an item that was just automatically going to be indexed up for them. That's probably an answer that you have to give me an answer, via an email. But it's an interesting challenge, I think, to a lot of our smaller providers, and probably to FFC, I suspect, would be the principal one. Now, whether that's regarded as being exceptional cost or just cost that they swallow as part of the contract, I wouldn't know, and that would be in the contracts construction. The other thing that I find a bit strange, and I'm expecting there to be a successor to, of course, is, I relentlessly said the new homes bonus. The last word is the clue to it, a bonus. But I'm expecting there is a possibility, I hear, of a successor coming down the line, because the government is extremely keen to try and build £1.5 million a house, 1.5 million houses a year, and incentivising councils might be a way to achieve closer to their target, which frankly at the moment they're probably on track to miss by quite a long way, I would suggest. Which is why there is, I think an awful lot still to play in this. I did want to just make a really minor point on fees and charges, because we have introduced last year a fly tipping charge of £1,000, and if you pay it within 10 days, we cut it down to 400 quid. It was my understanding that we could also fine the originator of the rubbish. Now, I don't think in our fees and charges it makes it clear that we can not only fine the fly tipper, but also the provider of the rubbish. And I think that probably, I can't remember what the fine is, but it is just a ticket. I think it's 400 quid, rather bizarrely. But I think that my suggestion would be that we had a separate line for that, because of all strange things, it came up at Strensham Parish Council, which was, why don't you find the people where the rubbish is coming from? Because I can tell you exactly where it came from, if you get my drift. Neil.
Yeah, we had this discussion a little while back, and I think I sort of raised the point that my concern is that residents who potentially thought they were giving it to a licensed person, and then suddenly find out they've got a fine when they weren't expecting it, and we could have trouble with reclaiming that, because there could be, and I think it's not that I was completely against the idea of including it, but I do think it needs time to come in with some kind of campaign and making sure that residents are aware and that they know exactly what they need to be asking for in terms of certification, qualifications, or whatever it is. But if it's, you could do first time, like there's a first time let off sort of thing, but if it's a repeat offender, which probably the most of them that are doing it probably are repeat offenders, then potentially you could bring that in. I'm just thinking it just needs a bit more thought before we make it absolutely that we put that onto residents.
There was a lot of publicity initially, wasn't there? Yeah. And maybe it needs to be brought back on a regular basis.
Well, I mean, if you talk to the happy residents of Breedon's Norton, they reckon you could make 100,000 a year out of this if you put your mind to it. But I agree with that, it needs publicity. So if we're happy to pick up the recommendations, which I have gone off, but that we receive 2.1 and 2.2, and duly note and approve them. Any thoughts? Seconded by Nick. Thank you very much. We all agreed? Thank you very much. And we move on to item 7, the Treasury Management Mid-Year Update. Appears to be going pretty swimmingly.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a good news story. As members are aware, this report shows how we managed our cash investments in the first half of the year. We expected to be earning around about £4 million worth of interest, and we now expect it to be around about 6. It's quite nice that Josh is here today. Josh is in my team. He works closely with Steve Smith, and he now does a lot of the day-to-day treasury management. So he has helped us generate this 6 million. Our benchmark indicators are broadly on track, and there was one breach of our investment limits in July when CCLA processes made us go overdrawn by about 300,000 and we incurred a bank charge of £71. We did go through the whole dispute process with CCLA, but they stuck to their guns, and it was only £71, so we said, okay, we'll deal with it. But yeah, we weren't friends for a while. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. No, I should have really brought this in at the budget. Or maybe not, because you probably put it into reserves anyway. I did wonder if our forecast of Treasury returns, I mean, in effect, we were 50% out, because interest rates have been stronger for longer than we anticipated. I have a feeling that we put a figure in for our Treasury management again of about 2 million-ish. And my instinct would be that we would be, I mean, this is a comment, I suppose, that I would be surprised if it was considerably, if it went down by 50% in the forthcoming year, to be honest.
You're absolutely right, Chair. There's been a lot of our advisors are now coming back and saying that rates are actually going to stay pretty much where they are before they start dropping. So yes, when we do our budget report for February, we will obviously readjust our interest rate assumptions. But yes, I suspect we will make more than we've currently got in the budget report as forecast.
And just on Treasury management, I have absolutely no idea whether we're part of APSI, because Thurrock, who we lent sums of money to so they could foolishly invest on the words of a solar farm, I did notice that Thurrock are now commencing legal action against 20 councils, of which, I mean, 1 or 2 are comparatively close to us. But I take it we are not a member of APSI and we're not involved.
I don't know whether we're a member of them, but we're not one of the 23. Right. There is a list of them, and we're not on that list. Yeah. I'm not aware that we're a member.
No, I'm not aware that we're a member.
I mean, my advice to Thurrock would be, I don't think this legal, if you're in a hole, stop digging. It would be my advice. You know, I don't see this going particularly far, to be honest. But brave try, I suppose. Any other points on Treasury management? If not, if we can duly note the report. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much. And we move on to, and thank you very much for attending at 1 o'clock, Chris, today, the Internal Audit Progress Report. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is covered on pages 151 to 195 in the agenda pack. It's the routine BAU internal audit progress update, and since the last meeting we've finalised 3 reports. We also have 1 audit currently at the fieldwork complete stage, and 3 in progress, 4 are at the planning stage and 5 are not yet started. Members will be aware I've been updating the committee regarding our resources over the last few meetings, and we have had 1 long-term sickness case, which the impacts of which we've offset, at least in part, by use of agency. The good news is that we have been able to recruit to the vacant auditor position, which was the 1 remaining vacancy in the team. We had 58 applications for that job, and I'm pleased to say we've got a new person starting on the 2nd of December, and that will mean that we have a full team, all positions filled. So yes, we are still behind our schedule in terms of linear delivery of our audit plan to Whithaven for this year. It will never be linear, but we are behind the profile. And reasons for that, as I mentioned at the last meeting, that we'd had resources deployed elsewhere during Q1 at other councils where we were further behind than we were here. We've also had 85 days worth of staff holidays during the summer and early autumn period, and I mentioned the sickness. And a couple of audits that we put on hold until Q4 at management request. However, given that we now have a full team from the 2nd of December, we also still have a member of agency staff with us until at least the end of February. And there is some further work that we're outsourcing, which is on a more specialist nature. We also have Josh joining us, who's going to save us £6 million in January. But Josh, we've got some audit work lined up for yourself at Hereford and Worcester Fire and Rescue Service. Not here, because we obviously can't have you writing your own homework, but that's all organised. And the message is that every single piece of work at every organisation in the shared service is resourced to be delivered on time. I'm confident, and I'll just relay the confidence that you'll have your annual report and opinion on time for this year. And as you know, I updated the client officer group last week, I put it the other way round. I couldn't justify coming to you and asking for a reduction in the audit plan, because really we'd be doing it to make life easy for ourselves. We do have enough resources to deliver the remaining work, and we will risk manage delivery by reviewing progress every week, and that's part of our BAU. So as I say, full team in place, all work budgeted for. Members will recall that I went through a new suite of performance indicators at the last meeting, and I just wanted to say in relation to productivity, which is being monitored every week, we were at 66% at the beginning of this financial year. We're now up to 78%, so we're very close to hitting the target, and the figures are improving week by week. There's nothing currently emerging from our work that would give cause for alarm in terms of the Council's governance and control and risk management framework. The finalised reports on Council tax NDR and benefits, they do provide substantial level of assurance in relation to 3 key financial systems. Ironically, it underpin the financial statements that have been reviewed today. We've got no concerns in relation to implementation of recommendations. There are 37 outstanding, but none of those are overdue. The table on page 159 to 162 sets out the full plan, the status, the anticipated reporting dates, and as I mentioned last time, we're putting some commentary against each assignment, and as agreed last time, I've included the full reports as well as the summary commentary so that members can compare how I've summarised the results of each audit with actually what the reports say, and hopefully you'll feel that we've drawn the key facts out in that summary table. And then finally, in relation to changes to the plan, as I mentioned, there are no proposed changes, so there's therefore nothing for members to formally approve, but members are asked to note the report, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any, Neil, questions?
It's just a comment, to be honest. Obviously, Chris, I do appreciate that you've given us the full reports and that to look through. And, you know, it was just like I picked up on a couple of things, like, for example, on page 173, single person discount. It was just good to see that and see that action had been put in place and that there was overtime to try and get back on track with that. And there's another one on page 184 regarding vulnerable people, again seeing that action was being taken to sort of get back on top of things. So that was all I had to say, really. Thanks very much.
Just on the single person discount, I seem to remember that some years ago, probably 4 years ago, we ran a a fairly in-depth review of this, courtesy of an outside agency, I think. It isn't really an audit question, I'm afraid.
If I can, through you, Chair. So we have recently undertaken another review with county support as well. I can't think exactly how many were picked up, but we did have a number where there was savings then, because we'd be generating additional council tax income for all of the councils, and then clearly the majority going back to the county. Yeah, so we have done that. We try to do it every few years.
Yes, because I seem to remember it was quite... I mean, it's quite lucrative, I think, for the district. It was in excess of 100,000, I think. No, was it? Can't have been that much. But it was a reasonable sum.
Through you, Chair, I think we've got around a third of people who are currently claiming single person discount across the district. So we use an external agent because then they look at experience, see if people have picked up credit from, a catalogue or a mobile phone at the same address that somebody's claiming single person discount from. So then we write to them and say, are you sure? You sure you still want to claim single person discount, etc. So that's why we use an external company with that skill set.
No, thanks. And just on the reprofiling of the plan, I thought that looked sensible and not particularly news. Nick?
Just on that single person's discount, on the website you can actually apply for one. You can't actually say you don't want one. Because I was in it, I've been in this position. So I have a single person discount and I don't want it anymore.
So at the moment they're expecting you to call.
So I've emailed info at whatever, but it seems strange that you can actually apply for one, but not actually
Cancel it.
cancel it. Okay. Like,
There's a transmit, yeah. Very good. Thanks for that. So if we can duly note the report. And finally, we move on to assets, who've sat there very quietly, presumably sunbathing, I suspect, in Edinburgh. I'm told the weather's been lovely for days up there, but the odd touch of snow apparently on the east coast, according to the wife's cousin, who lives in somewhere like Macduff, which is quite a long way from Edinburgh, actually. But generally, I suspect bracing. Rebuilding assurance, and thank you very much indeed for your report. Do you want to say some introductory words?
Of course, thank you, Chair. And yes, we have had no snow in Edinburgh, and it has been cold, but it has been blue skies. So unfortunately, I know that isn't the case down your neck of the woods. So we have provided you with a paper today, which is only a briefing paper. It isn't us providing any form of assurance or any opinion. It's on the back of the Financial Reporting Council producing a briefing called Local Audit Backlog Rebuild and Assurance. And following the 13th of December, local authorities that have been receiving disclaimed opinions will be moving into what we are calling the recovery phase, the recovery period. And this paper is setting out some of the key messages in terms of what that might look like for local authorities that are facing this position. I think the key messages to take away from it is that measures have now been put in place to reduce the likelihood of the position of the backlog occurring again, and these measures include backstop dates, which are set out in the briefing note. It will take a number of years to go through that recovery period and rebuild the assurance. It will not happen overnight. It will not happen in one single year. So there will be a plan that we need to put in place to show how we are going to build up that, rebuild that assurance over the years to get the local authority back into a position where they are receiving unqualified opinions or not disclaimed opinions. I think key to this, and the briefing paper does highlight that as well, is that there has to be effective working between both the auditors and the council, and that includes those charged with governance as well. So clear communication from both sides and working through how we rebuild that assurance, as I say, to get the council back into a position where they are not facing disclaimed opinions. That's all I really wanted to say on the paper, but Michael and I are obviously here to take any questions on it.
I only had one question, which is, looking at the backstop dates in Exhibit 1, it's going to take us till the 31st of January until we have the possibility of an unqualified opinion. Am I right in that, or am I wrong?
2026.
2027, I thought.
So it will depend on the individual circumstances facing each local authority as and when they move out of that position of having disclaimed opinions. So we are currently in discussion with Jane and Alice about what that looks like for Wychavon, and the intention would be that we would be coming back to the committee, a future committee, with a plan on what this looks like for Wychavon. So it will vary depending on the individual circumstances of the local authorities. In particular, you're in a more challenging position because you have a number of years outstanding or number of years disclaimed opinions in comparison to a local authority which may only have 1 year of disclaimed opinions. So they might achieve a earlier recovery position.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, in effect, your answer says sort of watch this space and we'll come forward with a plan. I mean, I take it the principal issue is when you can establish a secure baseline at the start of the year to work off would be the sort of number one priority.
In effect, we need to get to a position where we can issue I'm going to say an undisclaimed opinion. We need to have, in effect, 3 balance sheets in place. So that is why it's going to take a bit of time for us to get to that position.
So I'm probably running a year in front of myself. Oh well. Well, thank you very much indeed, and I look forward to seeing the reassurance plan when it comes forward, because I think that'll be a document that we will be, very interested in as a committee, because obviously re-establishing trust is a sort of key thing. I mean, it's rather strange, but we used to have 1 or 2 armchair auditors, as the great Lord Pickles used to call them. But unfortunately, the principal one, who used to write to me twice a year, died, unfortunately, passed on comparatively recently from Cropthall, and he took an extraordinary interest in local government accounts. So that certainly frees up about 4 hours of my time a year. But he normally had an interesting point. Basically, he wanted the council tax to be permanently frozen, if not cut, and most of the reserves redistributed back to the people who created them in the first place, the council taxpayers of Wychavon, which certainly was a view. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining. I'm absolutely convinced that I hope I'm going to be convinced that the recovery plan and reassurance plan will be substantial from yourselves, and you know, we will be able to look back on this period as being a hiccup rather than a well, just a hiccup in the system, whether it was caused by COVID or whatever. I did find it interesting, though, that internal audit had 71 applicants. Was it 71? 58 applicants, and yet Ernst & Young seemed to be unable to recruit anybody. Anyway, there we are. Thank you very much indeed for your time. If we can just duly note, if the committee has no other points, thank you very much indeed. So the final thing is what is the final point, Spencer? Future dates. Valentine's Day, the 14th of February. What an appropriate date for us to meet, I feel. Will be our next meeting next year. So can I take this opportunity of wishing you all a happy Christmas, and for those of you in Scotland, a joyous New Year. Having once been in Glasgow on New Year's Eve, I vowed never to go there again. So have fun. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.